the way to use LinkedIn. And really, I think that it really in its most simplest form is you being able to find people that are similar or people that have similar interests to you and just having conversations with them about what they've done and the paths they've chosen, the jobs they've taken, the jobs they didn't take, and just learning from that. And that's kind of the point of it. I always think it's kind of important too, besides just keeping it really kind of straightforward and more conversational on LinkedIn, is it sometimes doesn't have to always work out, meaning that people you talk to now, your paths may cross again. It could be in a year, it could be 3 years, could be 5 years. So, going onto LinkedIn and doing some searching, and we'll show a little bit how to do that today, is really important because it will benefit you both now, potentially with some short-term opportunities and people sharing what they're doing and the companies they're working for, but maybe down the road too. And so think of it as time well spent. If you do have a LinkedIn profile, you may want to log into it because we'll be talking about things and I'll be showing you some screenshots that I'll be referencing where to look for those in your LinkedIn profile. So if you have one, that's great. And if you don't, no problem at all. We can dive right in. Let me sort of kick things off for our session today and just tell you a little bit about some resources that you'll have available, obviously, after you've graduated, here. And, let me just pause for a quick second too. You're graduating in an unprecedented time. But I also say that, and I say this very sincerely, that, you will get through this. We will all get through this. We'll be better for it. We'll have learned something along the way. We'll have learned and adapted. And life is so much about adaptation. It's about pivoting, right? It's about things that didn't materialize for you the way they had thought maybe, and how you have to overcome. And we've all had those stories along the way. Like you've all had those stories just to get here today, right? The path you chose, the challenges you overcame, the classes and the exams to kind of reach this point. And we in the Career Center and my colleagues and alumni, you could not be more proud of you. And we're excited about what the potential has for you going forward because of so much that you've gotten through. And then now here we are. So we're here for you. The resources are here for you both today, tomorrow, in 2 months, in a year, in 5 years, 10 years down the road. The Career Center website, as I know many of you have been on, does illustrate some things that you should have done along the way. And you can always look back at those because if you want to make sure you've done the right things, or as you finish up, exams get completed, and then you have maybe a little bit more time, you're kind of aware of kind of all the situations and things that you can do. So definitely take a look under the Career Center, under what's your roadmap. It lists the kind of things you should think about. The Trying Career Guide also is downloadable from this website. And it does also have some tools and resources that you can use as you graduate. It talks a little bit about LinkedIn, talks about, of course, a resume and cover letter, interviewing, graduate schools. So it's a lot of resources. You can find it on the Career Center website underneath the Roadmap tab. Highly encourage you to do that. And these are just some of the quick things that the Career Center, as you guys know, we have all moved to a virtual operation. If you're interested in setting up any appointments with us, obviously do all of that through Handshake. There are both my Career Center team of 24 people, as well as our additional alumni and advancement colleagues have also opened up their appointment calendars. So if you're looking for a 30-minute one-on-one conversation with someone about your resume, your LinkedIn, your cover letter, about just how to navigate these times, things that you're thinking about or decisions you're looking to make, we're here for you. You can just sign up for on Handshake to do that. All right, so let me dive in then to kind of where we are with regards to the resources in the Career Center stay the same. Of course, this is the laundry list of people. Everybody in the Career Center has a focus area. We're all generalists by training, but we do have a focus area because I believe that by focusing, we become kind of experts in certain functionalities. But that does not mean by any means that somebody in the Career Center is better suited to help you because, like I said, we all have the generalist training accordingly. If you've not been on Handshake, this is obviously the Handshake link. The Handshake link and your access to it continues as an alum. So you'll have the ability to go on to Handshake and find opportunities, and this works, of course, after you graduate. So it's really important to make sure you come back often to Handshake as the summer progresses. New opportunities will be posted, onto Handshake. If you're not familiar with how the Handshake process works and sort of searching, I wanted to offer a couple of quick slides about that. So as you know, you log in here. This is your profile page. And then you obviously will click on the jobs functional tab. And then it's really important to spend some time here as you think about all the different kind of areas you can filter around. And what I mean by filtering is that if you know you're going to be moving to LA in a couple months or in a few weeks or whatever, you want to start filtering by geography. That's a really important lens. Or for example, if you know you're looking for full-time opportunities or internships or whatever, you want to sort of filter. And there's lots of ways to filter. So make sure you're spending a little bit of time, because I looked the other day on Tuesday, and there was about 4,200 jobs, full-time jobs, that are open to alumni. So there's a large number of opportunities on campus. So despite what the media, despite what maybe you're reading about, there is a lot of companies that are still growing and are still kind of looking and pivoting their roles to adapt to the new kind of parameters that is the pandemic and kind of moving out of the pandemic. So I definitely encourage people to check on Handshake, as well as other resources, like including LinkedIn, which we're going to talk about in a minute. People sometimes do ask, like I said, and I include this slide just as a landscape. If you talk to, obviously, you have friends that are maybe still in school at UC San Diego. This just shows the number of opportunities that are open for freshmen, for sophomores, for juniors, and for seniors. These slides, like I said, were captured these a couple weeks ago, but there is still opportunities out there. So definitely making sure that students, as you are looking out and thinking through things. This is again just a little quick slide of how many people have on our school have adopted and basically been active on Handshake. And so we want to make sure we're obviously keeping things moving forward. If you're an international student, I want to highlight just a couple things as you go into Handshake. Making sure you're doing the filters to look for U.S. optional, U.S. work authorization. So to make sure that it aligns with your visa status and OPT status, and obviously you have great colleagues in the International Student Program Office that can help you with any questions you have with regards to kind of work status and things of that nature. I know they've been having a bunch of webinars that are listed on the International Student Program Office website. So you're welcome to check that as well for certain particular questions with regards to international opportunities. And then in addition, on Handshake, under the resources tab, so if you go under a resources tab, you will find a link for going global. And going global actually gives you a list of companies that have posted roles that are open for U.S. authorization type of opportunities, so sponsorship opportunities for students. So it's another resource that you can kind of look at. There are postings there as well, and again, it's under the resources tab in Handshake, along with other resources like Big Interview, and a few others that can be helpful as you're sort of moving down the road that, again, you have access to as you graduate. Okay, because I'm not naive, and here we are, right? It's the summer of 2020, and the world is different. So let's just talk about kind of where we are and what I think we can think about, what we can control. So much we can't control right now, but I think it's important to spend some time thinking about what we can control. So I put 5 ideas here that I think could be intriguing to pursue, or at least just know about. At the end of this time, whenever we get back to some sort of situation, what we'll call normal, and I don't know if there is ever a normal, but something that resembles more what a routine looks like, people will ask you what you did during the pandemic. How did you navigate the situation that was this change in the world? And you will need to have an answer for that. And so I want to make sure that people aren't getting too kind of held up by uncertainty and by I can't control any of this to things that they can't control. So for example, number 1, if you, for example, were to think with a couple classmates, 2 or 3 of them, and say, hey, we should do some research and write a paper, a 2 or 3 page paper about something that's interesting to you. It could be big data, how companies are thinking about the pandemic and maybe shifting resources. It could be about something that had to do with your major. It doesn't matter what it is. It's more of that you're doing something and taking that paper and publishing it, meaning posting it on LinkedIn or putting it under your LinkedIn profile. I was doing some independent research with my classmates about this. We wrote a paper and gave some opinions. Again, it just shows, again, you're forming leadership. You're forming a team. That's a skill, right? You're doing research. That's also a skill. You're publicizing, social media, that's a skill. These are all skills that are very much relatable for jobs and for employment. Number 2, if there's things that you'll be going to this part of the world, you'll be going back to LA or back to Beijing or whatnot, is there things that you can volunteer at that could give you some skills that you could kind of, again, position and leverage down the road as you're looking for full-time employment, right? So, for example, social media, accounting, logistics, things like that. If there's small businesses, startups, right, that are very nimble that have just a few people. You can find them on LinkedIn. Maybe it's worth having a conversation of, I'm very open to potentially doing a 1 or a 2 week project for you, very defined. This is the type of challenge. I want to do a market analysis. I want to do some benchmarking data. I want to do some analytics regarding your social media channels and how you can better utilize them. That's an opportunity. You can get a couple bullet points from that experience and then, again, use that. Number 3, potentially some part-time things, right? I don't need to clarify what a part-time role is, but I think everybody kind of understands what that is. Number 4, thinking about what you can do kind of as you're transitioning and graduating and moving forward, right? So is there things that are of interest that you want to sort of, curate the conversation on or add some thoughts around? So, are you interested in potentially maybe helping some students, taking an online course, just learning some skills, doing some athletic training? Again, just bettering yourself. What are the things you can control? To obviously make sure that we're thinking about. And then number 5, this is what we'll spend some time on today. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can reach out to people that are a couple years older. This is not something that's like 10 or 15 years that are, these are people that are a few years older that have took careers that could be interesting to you and you want to learn how they navigated that. So let's keep going. At the end of the day, people get hired for 2 things. They get hired so they can do the job, of course. They get hired because they're smart. They can do the quantitative work. They also get hired because they can fit in. They can add value. They're fun to be around. I think we all know what that means, right? Think about those things, the people that see fitting into an organization. And those are the soft skills, right? Those are the things that you can bring to the table. So for example, if you're not sure what those are, think about the 12 competencies, which were a big part of your experience here at UC San Diego. And when did you show these type of things? When did you show the ability to look and do research? When did you show ability to do critical thinking? You could have done this in a class. And you could have done this maybe over an internship. You could have done this in a research lab. But these are all things that if as an employer in an interview, I would say, hey, Lisa, I'm really interested in learning more about your ways that you think and analyze data. Tell me an example when you work with large amounts of data and how you analyzed it, right? I'm interested in talking to you, Christy, about, tell me a little bit about a time you were on a team and you had a teammate that wasn't really doing what they needed to do, wasn't, pulling their weight. How did you help them? How did you coach them, right? So think about things that are experiences you had. You may have to write these down, and that's totally understandable, and try to maybe bullet them so you can kind of just really get a quick kind of story. But answers to the type of questions, if somebody would ask you, name and give me a time when you showed leadership, you should have an answer to that. Tell me, understand how you thought about the context of global and the world is flat. Like how do we think about things like that? So that's an important piece. So those are skills that we're going to show you. Next 3 slides, I want to make sure that we just cover real quickly before we move into LinkedIn is the resume. On the resume, obviously very important. Some things as you're graduating, you want to make sure that you listed your graduation month and year. Obviously that's now coming up. You'll also potentially want to include, if you have a summary section on your resume, you want to make sure you're transitioning that summary section to a little bit of more of a forecast. And what I mean by that is if you're looking at roles that are in the arts, in graphic design, you want to say in that summary section, I've done these things and I'm really looking to pursue opportunities that could cover and bring in my creative experience, my work with design thinking and prototyping. You want to make that area as a forecast. And the reason you do is there's not many areas from your professional perspective that you can look into the future, right? You can move forward. Your resume, majority of it is about the past, right? It's things you've done, behind you. LinkedIn is the same thing. It's things that are behind you, your past experiences. But people get hired and they move into new roles because of what they can bring to that role, right? The past does in some ways dictate the future. But if you can help in the resume section kind of narrow that down and say, hey, I'm looking for roles that are things like this that can help employers and that can help you kind of define your search. The middle section of the resume, this is all again, of course, on the Career Center website under our resume template, but it just gives you things to think about. There's kind of 2 big points of a resume that I think I want to make mention of here. Number 1 is you write a bullet point down. The bullet point should tell me a skill. The bullet point should show, from this experience, I worked on a team. Great. It tells me that you can be a team player, that you can work on a team. If the next bullet point tells me the exact same thing, that you're on a team, that you were able to add value to a team, that's not as impactful as the next bullet point saying that you were being able to kind of be qualitative and data and analytical on the team. Or another bullet point that tells me that you're good with kind of the financial aspects of a certain role. So think about each bullet point. Could it be summarized in a couple words? And are those words the same for every bullet point that you talk about, right? Number two, every bullet point, and you can Google this because, like I said, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but Google bullet points have basically a PAR or a STAR format. PAR, problem, action, result, or STAR, situation, task, action, result. If you can, students are really good at listing a problem and listing the action that was taken to solve that problem, of course, right? The result, though, of that action is really important. So if you can say, for example, analyze data to reformulate the data pieces to make it more user-friendly. Well, that's great, but what was the value of doing it to making it more user-friendly? The result of that in a situation was it made the operations 5% more efficient, or it saved dollars or time. Those are the type of things that if you can think about every bullet point and if you can quantify it, not everything is quantifiable, I get that. But if you can quantify it, what was the result of the activity that you did? That gives a really good impression from an employer's perspective to say, hey, if I put this person on a team with this type of problem, could they generate this action and could they give me this type of result, right? It helps kind of close the gap because at anything, right, your experiences are in one part. The role that you're looking for is another part. There's a gap between them. We're trying to close that gap so you look more like the person that can do the job than obviously less. Last part of the resume, important, is I think people get hired for the whole person. Of course, you get hired for the ability to do the job and skills, but this is really about who you are. So I think it's really important for people to list some of their skills, awards, certificates, language fluencies, and things you do in your free time. People, I value hobbies, right? They want to know maybe what you're reading. They want to know how you're spending your weekends. Again, sports, cooking, journaling, all of things like that. Anything that you find compelling, it resonates with you. It's a great kind of thing to have either on LinkedIn or on your resume. But again, it makes you real, right? And people get hired for being real. So I think it's an important thing to have. Okay, let's dive into the resume, or excuse me, the LinkedIn. Let's start with the photo. These photos are not very good for a myriad of reasons. Number one, on the upper left, tough to see who the person is. This is about a photo that's relatable and you can see who it is. Number two, though maybe very stylistic and very cool to have pictures, that's not you, so we don't want to have that. As the two on the right, the one potentially maybe out in a social environment. This is a professional website, professional image, not a club, so probably not the right image there. And then the other one is obviously the size of the picture. So make sure you're choosing a picture. The reason being is pictures, as you can see, 36 times more likely. You're relatable. People obviously in this situation especially relate to people with a picture. Here's an example of a student, one of our career peers, Erica, in the Career Center. I want to show you a couple things about her profile that I think are relevant. So number one, and again, all of these settings that I'm mentioning, you basically will go up to your picture in the LinkedIn page that you're currently on, and you'll click on your settings and you can kind of change these accordingly. But you want to customize the URL, right? You don't want the random numbers and letters at the end of the URL. That's not professional. You can go in and you can just kind of retype your name in whatever form. In this case, Erica, she put Erica Lynn as hers. She has a great photo, right? Professional. That image in the background behind her, that big rectangle, which looks like the constellation of starry objects, you can add a photo there. So why not? Put something maybe that's relatable to you. Maybe a project that you worked on, of a picture of you doing something. Or maybe it's a passion area. If you really like sunsets or your time at San Diego, put the library there, whatever it is. Also, you want to include your class year in your summary statement right underneath your name. You don't want people to have to guess, did you graduate, did you not? Class of 2020. Real estate, straightforward to doing that. And you want to start building some connections. So connecting with friends. Again, just about scaling your connections and getting things going. Okay, it's under the privacy and settings and privacy is where you edit all of that. Okay. So as we get into now the LinkedIn profile, the biggest question we have is the summary section, the about section, which is that section well before, right underneath your name and your picture of what you've kind of done. So as you see in this case, I'm just showing this as an example. This is Eric Richards. He graduated in class of 19. And you can see kind of he writes about a couple things. First off, you notice he puts some spacing between the paragraphs, makes it a little easier to read. Also, you notice he covers a few things in terms of time. Number one, he talks about what he's excited about: human-centered design, products, systems, services that empower communities. That is very broad, right? That's not like it's focused for a certain industry or a certain company, but it's very broad, very relatable. He talks about some of his experiences here in San Diego when he was at school. Apparently, he obviously was a co-led the Design for America. And then he talks about some of the things that he's taken that experience and done, which is, again, all about that translation, right? Translating the experiences and things you've done, into kind of what's next. And then the bottom, right? Look at that, real conversational, very friendly. Hey, I'm open to chatting, very informal. Learning more about community-centered design, civic engagement projects. Again, a nice summary statement here, and I want to show it as an example of things you can think about in terms of what's going on. So this is Eric's. I also scrolled farther down and took a screenshot of Eric's skills. Now these skills, if you look at them, design thinking, project management, literature reviews, some of his technical skills with Adobe, down to interpersonal leadership, teamwork, public speaking. We just talked about that, right? That was the 12 competencies that I mentioned like 3 or 4, 10 slides ago. So think about this, all of this does connect. It's all kind of interrelated. So when you think about things that are on your LinkedIn profile, if you're not sure of what your skills are, you certainly should start to the 12 competencies we just talked about, because obviously those are ones that are relatable, and you can obviously very much, in this case, transfer them to kind of employment. Okay, so the summary statement, I want to talk through a little bit of how that kind of works. So people think about their summary statements in kind of four buckets: what they're good at, your major, how you want to apply it. If you had an internship, that obviously is interesting. You can leverage that, or just a life skill that's relevant today. So I want to talk through each one. If somebody says to you, you're good at social, that's an intriguing skill, obviously. You may want to think, I'm really good at aggregating social trends and social data. If you're potentially an athlete and you really enjoy like winning and being on a team, well, there's a competitive dynamic to that, right? And there's value from an employment perspective of being a competitor. If you're good at a certain course, well, then maybe you can help people that aren't as creative, or you can really engage people. If you and your professors have talked about, I'm really good at this type of thing, maybe these are transferable skills like research or grant writing or lab work. Again, all transferable type of things. Here is basically where I want to spend a little bit more time as well. And we're going to go into this in a live setting, but I want to walk you through the screen shares of the slides first, and then we're going to go live and I'll pull my screen up to kind of show you what I'm thinking. Basically, when you log on to LinkedIn, open up a new tab and type UC San Diego, and basically you'll land on this homepage. The homepage, as you see, looks just like this. There's the home section, the about, jobs, the alumni. The alumni tab is where we're going to focus in our efforts. So if you click on the alumni tab, you'll see that UC San Diego has just shy of 200,000 alumni. We're going to come back to that. What's important is it's very searchable. So, and I'm going to show you kind of how you can search it. So that's kind of what this image is of from the last slide. You can see here, we can search alumni by where they live. So for example, if you told me, hey, Chris, I'm really interested in moving to LA, you can see from this example, we have 27,000 alumni in LA. I can also search where these alumni work. Now this is obviously broad, but if you clicked on the LA tab, it will start telling you where the alumni work in LA. Also intriguing is I can type graduation years in. So I could say, I really don't think people from 1900 are relevant. They may not be around. And so I want to do a better data set. So maybe I type in like 2009 for a 10-year data set or something like that. It's totally up to you. This is kind of intriguing because this is almost like you're doing a control F on over 175,000 people's LinkedIn pages. So you can type in just about anything and it will pull people that are alumni of UC San Diego with that, whatever you type in. So you can type in like C++ or creative writing. You're welcome to try that if you have this page up in front of you. As you scan over, so basically you see right underneath that box, there's previous and next. If you hit the next, these two columns show up next. So this is how you're connected, not as important for right now, and these are your skills. And I'm gonna argue if you got to this page, Microsoft Office is probably not a skill. I think that's pretty generic, and I would hope and feel like also we have better skills to showcase. So there's nothing wrong with putting Microsoft Office and Excel as one of your skills, but I think there's better skills like the competencies, like leadership and research. Remember Eric was talking about like teamwork and Adobe. Those are better skills because I think they speak to a little more granularity. If you hit next again, you get to these two tabs. These are interesting because this is what they studied. So this is obviously students that majored in the exact same major as you. And this is obviously kind of what they're doing. So again, like the business development roles, engineering, research, etc. I want to show you an example of this in action. So what I did, as you see, I took start year up at the top right, 2000 to 2019. So I took about a 20-year data set. I clicked on, I wanted people that were psychology majors, and I'm interested in moving to New York City. So I clicked on New York, and it came up with 168 alumni. And so I go into that section, and then I said, okay, I want to find an alum that looks interesting. I just want to see, again, I'm not trying to like find the person at the perfect company. I'm just doing a little research. And again, this takes me, what, a couple minutes to do. I click on Josh just because I'm kind of curious, and Josh looks like he graduated with a BA in psychology, which is kind of what I'm graduating. So I get into Josh's profile, and here's what I'm reading. Okay, so Josh obviously did graduate with a degree in psychology, and I look where Josh went first. So it looks like he went to work for Mount Sinai Hospital, doing clinical research and assisting in DNA indicators. So it's interesting because, you know, I had heard that psychology majors could never get a job in healthcare. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case. And I'd argue you define your major doesn't define you. And you can see lots of illustrations of that in these LinkedIn profiles. So we'll play this out though. So Josh obviously spent some time at Mount Sinai doing research, and then he pivoted to retail. He went to work for Macy's. I wonder how he made that move. Maybe he knew somebody at Macy's. The interesting story. He looks like he did that for a couple of years, and then he's like, kind of over the retail thing. And I want to do something different. So it looks like was thinking, I may need to get reskilled in some data. So it looks like he took a boot camp for 4 months in data science at NYC, and basically got into some like programming language like Python and stuff like that. Did that for a little while. And then he said, okay, I need to start looking around and maybe work for a company that would value some of my experience in maybe this, coding space. And he got hired by a startup called Boxed. And you can see he does work now in data science, where he interned there, and then kind of works for them now. The point of the matter here, right? You've got a really cool alum from 2013 who worked in healthcare, retail, and now works at a startup in data science. What a cool story. There are so many decisions that Josh made along the way that could be really relevant and kind of related to what you're thinking about right now. And so that's the beauty of LinkedIn, is you can see these stories and these narratives of how people have navigated the journey, and you can ask questions along the way. So here's the thing. So if you, through this whole process, you're like, Josh seems like an interesting person. I'd love to learn more about him. Can I reach out to him? Of course you can. Here's why. What are the odds? I just picked Josh out of a basically alumni pool of almost 200,000 people. How many other people are emailing Josh right now to ask him about his story and his history? The odds are probably very much nobody, or one or two. It's not very frequent because of the numbers, right? So here's a sample script, and you're welcome to take your phone out and take a picture of this if you want. But basically, I always think it's important, because if you email Josh, he's going to be like, do I know you? And I just think it's important to say, we have not met. So Josh is like, okay, I don't know who you are. But all of a sudden, you immediately in the next couple words say, we are related, we're connected because I now have the same degree, or will have the same degree as you do. And why are you emailing Josh? Because again, you don't know if Boxed is hiring. Maybe you check Boxed website and maybe they are looking, who knows? But the point of it almost isn't even that. It's because the Josh, for example, let me take that off real quick. If you look up under Josh's name, and you scroll over to the right and it says Boxed, Columbia, see contact, 500 connections. Josh knows 500 plus people that could be intriguing for you to know as well. And so sometimes it's not about Josh's current company or current role. It's the fact that Josh knows lots of other people, and that could be helpful too. So that's why, again, if you go with a, hey, I'd really like to work for Boxed, and Josh is like, actually, hey, we're in a hiring freeze right now, Boxed isn't hiring, then it gets kind of awkward because Josh feels like he can't help you. And then you're like, yeah, I don't really know where this is gonna go. So I like this meta approach of, I just wanna learn. I want to be a student again. I want to learn about your network, learn about what you're doing at Box. And I welcome the opportunity. Talk for 15 or 20 minutes about his role, the projects. You can ask about how you went from Macy's to the data science, whatever it is. Again, less about, getting into you. It's not about you right now. It's about you wanting to learn more from Josh. So you don't need to say, hey, I'm this major, I'm going to, keep it simple. This is what you want to learn. And then you want to propose some times, right? Because Josh may be busy. He may be obviously, working from remote and he's not sure his schedule. But I like Tuesdays and Thursdays. Mondays, it's kind of busy. People are getting the work week underway. Fridays, like this Friday, maybe a holiday weekend, they're not going to be around. So propose a couple times. The point of the matter here is as you can read by my example, it's very conversational. I'm not trying to kind of make Josh feel awkward about, hey, who do you know? Once you get on the phone with Josh, 11 out of 10 times, I'm going to say that in jest, 11 out of 10 times, Josh will ask you, what are you looking to do? What can I help you with? What are you thinking about next for you as you kind of graduate and move into, you move into New York City, you know, with a psychology major? That's where it will become interesting. And then you can, hey, I'm really thinking about, I really would like to look at roles that are in the startup space, roles that are in the technology sector, roles in healthcare, whatever it is that you're thinking about, okay? So another way, and I want to give another example of how you can basically come up with your summary statement. So for example, if you were looking at a job, for example, you want to be in the athletic apparel space. So this is an example of a internship or job description. And basically it looks like a lot of words. And you're like, goodness, this is a lot to read. And I'm trying to find what are the important words here that we can incorporate into a summary statement on LinkedIn. So instead, so obviously there's in a situation like that, there's words that are the more important ones, like what the role is in fact hiring for, right? So obviously there's a description that lists the words that they want really in the applicants that they're looking for. So but it's a lot of work to do that. So what I think it's better to do is if you find 3 kind of job aggregators, right? You can use Handshake, you're very familiar with it. You can look at Golding Global, and you can obviously look at LinkedIn. And what you can do is you can look also Indeed and Simply Hire. But you can find 3 jobs that you're interested in. And I'm looking for just, again, 3 or 4. Doesn't have to be an exact number. What you do is you want to then obviously take that description of that job. In this case, I picked an example of a Nike Analytics undergraduate intern, but you can see there's a lot of words in this job. What you should do is obviously you could read the job and look for these keywords, but instead, I think it's better to kind of take a few of these jobs, do a Control-C, basically, or excuse me, Control-A, copy the entire job description and put it into a Word document, okay? So obviously straightforward, take a few of these job descriptions, drop them into a Word document, the entire Word document. It'll probably be 15 or 20 pages long. That's not the point. Take that Word document and then throw it into a word counter. What the word counter is going to do, it's going to find the words that are repeated. And typically, when recruiters are writing job descriptions, they're writing words that are important in repetition because that's the ones that they want to make sure the candidate that's looking at it gets across. So in a situation like this, I did this exact exercise and I came up with these words. So obviously Nike's recommended, but look at the words that also showed up: analytical, global, which could be like, you know, obviously global mindset, teamwork, data, product. So what you do then is you take these words and you're like, these are really important words. I need to make sure I need to put these in my LinkedIn summary statement. And you create your summary statement with those words. So you take those words, this is just an example, and you write your summary statement with the words that the roles that you're looking for are looking for, right? So the idea in this case is you can see, you can write anything you want in your summary statement, so why not make it impactful? So in this case, this student wrote, obviously some keywords that stood out to her: relationship building, you know, obviously increasing productivity, analytical, creative, market research. So if you're not certain of how to write the summary statement, this is one really easy way to do it. Like I said, to quick summary, control basically a bunch of job descriptions, run that through a word counter, see what words jump out, take those words and incorporate it into a statement like this. Pretty straightforward stuff, right? Super. So this is a couple examples. So here's Chris, obviously, he's another alum. And you can kind of see what, again, his summary statement could probably use a little bit of work, but he does have some good stuff in here, right? He talks about his hobbies, which is kind of cool, right? Because again, I'm hiring for somebody that I want to know what they're doing. You know, and tells a little bit how you can catch up with them. You know, here's his email account if you didn't want to connect with him through LinkedIn. Again, here's another example. Here's a student, obviously, talking a little bit all of the things that he's worked on in school. Now, I'm reading this, and it's a lot to read, as you can tell, right? You've got about 25, 30 lines of text here. You may want to space that out. You may want to put some bullet points. Also, obviously here, included a resume. That's totally your call. If some people want to hold the resume back until they're asked for it, or that you're kind of using it. Obviously, some people want to have that on their LinkedIn profile. Totally up to you. Here's a really good example. So here's Sandra, obviously, class of 19. She also really has a real succinct kind of 3-line summary. I'm a rising, this is obviously before she graduated, rising senior, majoring in math, comp sci, human interaction. I'm enthusiastic about user-centered design, and promoting student leadership. I'm energized by problems to solve, making process more efficient, intuitive, empathetic. All of a sudden, I'm like, I have problems in my company that I'm looking for that could be better and more efficient, or that could be better, maybe customer focused. These are all skills that relate to me. And then you see she includes her resume here. Okay. So Again, straightforward. A couple bonus slides as we're in the home stretch here, and I'm going to chat for about another 5 or so minutes, and then we'll tee it over to questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop those into the Q&A, and my colleague Tyler can kind of help us out with those. If you want to attach any things to your resume, these are the formats that are allowed on the upper right. So PDF, Word, etc. This is an example that I mentioned earlier about if you created something with some classmates or a project that you did during your undergraduate work that you think is relatable and very much speaks to kind of the work that you're capable of doing, why not put it into a PDF form and add it to your LinkedIn profile? There's nothing wrong with obviously adding some things that you've done that you're proud of, that if somebody was to ask you about because they clicked on it, you could speak to it. So just a thought, food for thought there. Again, the idea here is the LinkedIn profile doesn't just have to be in a listing of kind of words and experiences. You can include also some project work and other things like that. Also included on LinkedIn is there's some recommendation sections. So some people could obviously speak to your ability to do projects and to work on things. It's up to you. My takeaways on this are, I've never read a poor recommendation, right? So they're always typically good recommendations. That's number one. Number two, as an employer or as a recruiter, I'm reading it to gauge, would you fit in my organization? So this is somebody that's speaking on your behalf, right? This is like a recommendation like you would for like a graduate school, somebody that's speaking on your behalf. And I'm reading it to see, okay, does this person have some of the skills that I need? And if you obviously ask somebody to write a recommendation for you, it would be nice to kind of obviously maybe reciprocate and write one for them as well. This is back to Eric's example when we talked about all these different skills, right? There's a couple thoughts on this. Are these your present skills? Are these your future skills? The skills section, you can add skills that you don't already have, but you want to grow into. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't need to let your past define your skills. You may want to say, hey, I'm really interested in coding. I don't have that coding experience yet, but I can still add that as a skill because I'm growing into it. No problem with that. Also think about, as you're looking at people on LinkedIn, remember we looked back a couple slides ago with Josh, our boxed guy in New York City with a psychology major. What are the things that he was doing basically in that role? What's Josh have as his skills? Maybe you should think about some of those skills, the skills that you want to have as well, right? Again, we're looking at somebody that's a couple of years older than you. You want to take a look at those skills and bring those back into your profile. And you also can finally include those in the summary statement, right? Because these are things that obviously are very much transferable across kind of industries and across roles. In addition, 27 times more likely to be found by recruiters that are searching on LinkedIn if you have skills. Why it's really important? Because again, there's also times recruiters who actually look on LinkedIn for candidates for roles. So you want to make sure you have those there. Last couple slides. If you're certain, sometimes students are thinking through, is there things that I can look at that can help me kind of define my soft skills or things that I'm really good at? We recommended the Career Center, the Clifton Strengths for Students. You can Google this, of course, and you can see from the grid below with the different colors, the purple, gold, blue, and the red, all the different kind of categories of various skills. And again, these are things that as you think about kind of or what would you be good at? So if somebody was to ask you, hey, Chris, what are the things that you're really good at? Give me the top 3 skills you have. I would say one, besides talking fast, would be basically positivity, right? Analytical and communication. So you want to make sure that you're thinking about kind of what are those things. If somebody was to ask you, what are you good at? You have an answer to that. And the Clifton Strengths can help you kind of define that. Okay. Last slide is, I say this kind of in jest, but we have a lot of time, right? You will have more time as graduation happens and going forward. How are you spending that time, right? What are the habits that you're thinking about? And are those things kind of benefiting you right now? Are they benefiting you down the road? Because it's really important for the things that we're doing now to make sure that they're paying some dividends and giving us kind of return on our time down the road. So definitely an important thing. Let me do this because this is my last slide before I move to my live LinkedIn. I'll show you kind of what I'm thinking about there. You want to kind of last 5 things. This is all about the rough draft. Like you're going to learn new skills, new opportunities, and things along the way. So this is something that really is never final. Your resume is never final. Your LinkedIn profile is never final because there's always things you can do better, improve upon. Something's going to change. Life is your strengths, not a major or career. It's really about like what you want to do. Your major doesn't define you. You define your major, as I already mentioned. Secondarily, you will have 10 careers. You will not have one, or maybe our parents or friends have one, but we'll have 10. Or more than that. And it will be all about the iterations and the pivots you take along the way. Again, I talked about people getting hired for fit. And again, also think about this transition. If you've been a student for 20 some odd years, and it's going to take a little work to now kind of translate that experience from not being a student. And then the last thing, obviously myself, Tyler on the phone, and all of us in the Alumni and the Career Center, we're here because somebody believed in us, and we really believe in you and what you have the capability of doing, and we're here for you to help you, along the way. So let me also, for my last, let me just show real quick the LinkedIn slide. This is the live version of what I was referring to kind of earlier. As you see, it's about 190,000. And so this is the section, when you land on the page, it will look like this. And then you just go over here and click to Alumni. And this is, again, where I think it's really cool. So like I said, just to do another live example, you can kind of take this and kind of drop it into some certain years. And then if you told me, Chris, again, going down here, I majored in, I'm just going to say business, international business. And you told me that you're interested in moving to San Francisco. Then all of a sudden I'm going to start seeing companies that have hired international business majors along the way, right? So again, you can start forming your company list that way and just kind of playing around with this. In addition, let's say, for example, Walmart was one of your dream companies. So I'm just going to go down to look, and this is how you could do company research. So for example, let's say that you got an interview with a company and you wanted to do some research about them of what they do. You could certainly go to kind of like this, looking at people's profiles and seeing what they're doing. You can, in this case, see that here Tiffany looks like she navigated from her degree in psychology in 2018 to some number of experiences at ResMed, obviously, which is a medical device company, to Mitchell, which does obviously creative work in pharma, and then obviously to Teradata, and now to Walmart. But what I'm getting at is you could basically click on Walmart e-commerce. In this case, you could obviously click on LinkedIn on employees that are working at Walmart e-commerce. And you could then all of a sudden start looking at kind of what people are listing as their projects. So for example, what I'm trying to do, and again, I'm scripting this on the fly, so I don't know if it'll work, but what I'm trying to do is if I have an interview with Walmart e-commerce, I'm trying to find out what people are writing about in their Walmart e-commerce section of their job profiles, because I'm hoping to get some information for my interview coming up. Okay, so yeah, see, this is sometimes the challenge. You can see I'm quickly doing this, so I'm not spending too much time on people's profiles. But I'm trying to better learn if there's some things that would be shared by people's profiles on LinkedIn about their job at Walmart e-commerce. Then I could kind of get into some details about and bring up some questions or thoughts regarding the interview. So that's another way to do kind of research on companies for any company that you're thinking about, both from I want to work there to potentially, like I said, others that are in that area. So let's do this. Let's take a timeout. I can always come back and mess around with LinkedIn and kind of how this works. But let's pivot to some questions.
Okay, so we have a question about summaries and cover letters. The question
Perfect.
is if they should they not include a summary if they are writing a cover letter? And it sounds like it's for their resume specifically. If I write both, how would the content differ?
Sure, got it. Yeah, totally. So, so basically, the cover letter, I think, is a little bit of a separate document than the resume, and I would include a summary on a resume. But the cover letter is going to get you, and how it's going to be different than a summary, is it will be able to speak in a little more kind of contextual terms about some of the experiences you had. So like a resume would talk about, I did this, obviously solved this problem and generated this result. You could then use the cover letter to say, hey, this is part of this was the challenge. This team was a global team. I was able to pull people in from all over the globe. We did a lot of data analytics and kind of Slack platforms. You can get into more like analytical kind of components of the actual role or the experience that you gained in the cover letter. And that's kind of like how it would be a little bit different than the resume and or the summary section, which again be a little more concise and a little more kind of like just fact driven. Whereas like I said, the context can be added in the cover letter. Hope that helps.
Great. So this is a really good question. So the student's asking about when we are putting our list of accomplishments on a resume, and we're talking about results. What was the result of this project I did? Their concern is that they find that they don't always have commendable results for the work experiences, in that observing what the result was, it was just kind of okay. And so how do you optimize that when you're, writing a resume?
Yeah, no, here's the thing too, right? So the people that will be reading this, they understand there maybe was parts of the result that you couldn't control. There also maybe was just the context of this was a experience that was in maybe an academic setting. And so it may not be as, I don't use the word glamorous or as like impactful as you would hope, but there is some acceptance and understanding that that's okay. I think what you can do is, again, making the most of it is think about the components of it that were kind of were bigger than, if you could pick out, if you had a problem and you produced this result, the result may not have been what you expected or hoped, but was there things that you learned along the way that you could kind of really maybe double down and explain more? Because again, that's really maybe where the opportunity, where the growth happened. And or was the result something that it was what it was, but it was also maybe it wasn't within your control because of X reasons. And so it's, so to say that is again, but people, I'd say bottom line now will be understanding of a result that maybe was not as maybe what you had hoped just because of, the state in your career that you are. Super. Okay. Let me take a look here. Do I get notified? I'm just going to read a couple of these questions. Do I get notified if somebody downloads your resume on LinkedIn? Do not. Your LinkedIn will be definitely public and you would not get any notifications. You will get notifications on the LinkedIn if somebody views your profile. You can always notice that. That's under the settings, under like notifications right up here at the top. So you basically could get information if somebody, in fact, did view. Good question. Yeah, a lot of these questions are related to like certain examples of like, what should a profile section look like? What should a photo look like? My biggest guidance on this is to spend some time really in just going into people's profiles and reading kind of what, what's intriguing to you about them. So for example, if you're majoring in psychology, keep my psychology question going, and you want to start to kind of see what people are doing, put in like a really small data set, like in this case, and just start clicking on people's profiles and seeing what they're kind of using as their profile. Like again, here is Laura. You can see that background could be worked on. Again, you can kind of read about kind of different summary sections, things like that. Another way to kind of do this is, for example, if you know that like one of your skills is data, or something that's, a little more defined than that, and kind of seeing what people that use kind of data in their profile are illisting. So you can kind of read about what their about section is, or you can see kind of what people's profiles are using. I think there's a lot of value add on LinkedIn. There's also not a lot of what is good or what is bad. It depends a lot on the situation. So for example, people that are in maybe creative spaces don't have, or maybe are a little more kind of open to kind of making their profile more creative than those that are in maybe less creative spaces. Are we back, Tyler?
Yep. Hi.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay. Technical difficulties.
All good. All good.
So this is a good question about education history on LinkedIn when you have multiple places that you've studied. So before coming to UCSD, they had attended a different four-year university, transferred, have participated in study abroad programs, and there's not really a way to indicate transfers or study abroad, so everything's kind of listed separately in LinkedIn. Okay. So they're wondering what is the best way to optimize the presentation of what their education has been on the LinkedIn platform.
Yeah, totally. So, there's basically, you can, I know I'll have to double check, but on the education section, you can list multiple schools. I know that's not a problem. You can just illustrate the years that you were attending in those schools, and that's fine. You can only list, for example, one school that you graduated from. But the beauty of LinkedIn is if you have you spent some time in another school, you obviously, in this search section up here, you can search like UCLA, for example, and you can do the exact same thing which we did for UC San Diego for UCLA, right? So you can do the same exact thing here. So that's one way. If there's other, what was the other second question of that, or second part of that with regard to experiences, Tyler?
Yeah. So what's the way to optimize listing all of those on a LinkedIn profile if everything's being listed separately?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I don't have a great answer for how the best way to do it. Again, what I would do is if you, for example, had some experience, it's scripts that you were trying to kind of weave into your story. I mean, in a situation like this, I'd probably look at some people's profiles to see how they did it, just to get some ideas. Like in this case, again, education is where you list your schools. And then again, based on the experience, probably moving it into somewhere down in this category. This is, of course, we talked about skills and endorsements, so the accomplishments. But looking at other people's profiles by keyword is probably the easiest way to do it.
Great. So we have a question here about building connections on LinkedIn. They're wondering what level of interaction is appropriate in order to request to connect. Should they connect with friends, classmates, acquaintances, family?
Yep, totally. So here's the thing. I think it's all how you frame it. Obviously, classmates, they're easy. That's a super easy connection. They know who you are. You know who they are. Of course, you're just kind of building scale. And obviously, down the road, your connections will become more valuable as people progress in their careers. So I think totally, people that you work with on projects in your classes, your friends, all of that's now. I also think it's really relatable. Obviously, anybody that I would say is within, 5 years out from UC San Diego understands what it's like to be a student, right? They were in your shoes not too long ago. And I feel like that's a very also easy, relatable, connectable kind of way to say, as a recent graduate, and now I'm kind of navigating the, kind of a professional market and kind of looking for what's next. Totally relatable. So I think you can kind of go that route. As you move into people that are, farther along in their careers and things like that, you want to be a little bit more professional kind of with those outreach opportunities, because again, it's a little bit farther out. They know more people. And so sometimes I recommend for students to start kind of with connections that are closer to you, 2, 3, 5 years out of school. Everybody is relatable in that respect. And then kind of build up as you kind of go from there. So for example, if you told me that I'm really interested in a job at Salesforce, I'll just kind of play this out as a live example. So we'll say Salesforce, right. So, then I would start saying, okay, who are people, obviously this is somebody that works, obviously with university talent, but, obviously, is this somebody that I would want to connect with? In this case, I would, because he's a UC San Diego alum. And again, I would hit the connect feature, add a note, and I would type, "Dear Catherine, though we've never met, I'm a graduating, kind of go down that road here." Again, connecting on LinkedIn is a very kind of, again, very casual. You're building conversations. You're trying not to get into too much very hard black and white kind of this, that questions kind of initially. Again, it's just, those will come with time, but the initial outreach should be pretty conversational, and that's pretty straightforward, at least for as you're starting out.
So we have a question about keeping old high school work and education experience in the LinkedIn profile. Is that something that would be recommended once they graduate from college?
Yeah, good question. So, here's my thing. Obviously, right now you're building experiences, and I think keeping some things from the later high school experience, junior year, senior year in high school is completely fine. As you think about kind of fast forwarding a year or two out, if you think about if you spent 4 or 5 or 6 years in undergrad, then you're kind of getting 2 or 3 years out. Now you're looking at things that happened in high school, which would maybe be 7 or 8 or 9 years ago. They're becoming less relevant, candidly, right? And so I think now is okay, but in probably a year or two, you probably want to take them off or just lower the importance, maybe shorten the description of what it was. Because again, people are going to be looking at your experiences that you did kind of during your academic time at UC San Diego, and then as you accelerate kind of beyond that.
Perfect. Okay. People often use the third person for their LinkedIn summaries, he, she, rather than I. Is that something that you would recommend?
Sure. I'm very much, again, that's your choice. If the third person makes sense for you versus the first person. I personally prefer the third person just because, again, that's just personal preference, but I have seen those written in kind of first person. So I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think it just depends on what feels better for you and the way that you can explain yourself to get across what you want to in your summary statement in your LinkedIn. So whatever one, again, delivers the message more clearly, succinctly, feels better to you is the one you should go with.
We have another question. I have a new part-time job that is not relevant to major long-term career goals. Is it okay to not state it as the most recent work experience and move it lower on my LinkedIn profile, even though it's a current experience and the most recent experience?
Yeah, no problem at all. So basically, yeah. So as you go into, I'll show you my profile since we're chatting. Basically, what you can do is you can kind of drag things. As you see, here's the pancake for this, and you can basically pull things down in your experience based upon where you want them to go. So yeah, no problem at all. You should move things down in the order that you want them to appear for people looking at your profile. And again, if you wanted to put kind of things that you're currently working on, like right now, for example, if you're doing some part-time work, but you don't want that to be kind of the top of mind, then maybe you want to put like independent study or something else, or recent grad or something, you know, until kind of another experience kind of, you know, becomes the better story that you want to share.
Great. Okay, so we're winding down here. Do you get notified if LinkedIn users view or download your resume?
Yeah, no, the only time that you, and again, I'm still showing my screen, so I'm showing you this in live format. Basically, you will see when people look at your profile, or it's called basically see the views. I don't know if it's listed, jobs, all views. So if you click the all views, it will show you who's looked at your profile, but it will not say, in this case, I'm showing you mine, like if Nick, in this case, reached out, I don't know if he's like what he's clicked on my profile. If I have a resume, he may have downloaded it. I don't know. All I know is he looked at my profile. Oh, and there's Tyler. Hey, Tyler checked out my profile. Super. Thanks, Tyler.
You're welcome. Okay. And this is our last question.
Sure.
What are the importance and method to using cell groups?
Using what again?
Cell groups. So I'm not quite sure what they mean
good
by
question.
that.
I'm not sure what that is. So maybe they'll go like business networking, or maybe the group feature on LinkedIn potentially. I'm gonna go with that. If it's the group feature, groups are interesting. And what I mean by that, let me show you kind of an example in kind of my profile. So if you scroll on down to the bottom of your profile, you'll get into kind of interest areas. In this case, and you go into click on, back out, click on obviously interests, click see all, and click on to groups. Now groups are obviously, in this case, I'm in higher ed, so my groups won't be very exciting. But point is, they basically, it does have value add from a group connection. So for example, if you were interested in working for IDEO, I think everybody probably familiar with IDEO, they do creative work and design, and you clicked on the group, which is IDEO, then you can obviously get into people that work in IDEO in this group. So you can click on the group, and then you go over here to the right side, and you click see all, and it shows you now, 6,000 people is a lot to work through, but it shows you people who are in the IDEO group, and therefore could help from a connection perspective. Again, if, for example, I'm just going to click on Guy. Now, I don't know who Guy is, but obviously we're in the same group, and so I could, in theory, back to my connection of like, how do you know somebody, click this feature. Though we've not met, I'm really interested in the fact that we share the same common area around the IDEO users group or whatever it was that I clicked on to begin with. So that's kind of how I would use the group functionality within LinkedIn.
Great. And this is our last question.
Okay.
How do we choose profile sections to turn on in our LinkedIn profiles from the drop down on the profile? Yeah,
so you basically would go to under settings and privacy right here, and you click on this, and it's basically going to be in this area here. I believe it's under activity. So when you share, it's basically when you share any changes. It's right this section right here. You change anything on your profile, it's going to say whether you want your network to be notified. And I clicked no. If you prefer that, you just click yes. So that's basically the area. This is where it would be. Double check on that, but that's my gut on exactly where it would be down in the activity section.
Okay, so it looks like we have a correction. They meant on the main profile page where it says add a profile section.
Okay. So what was the question then regarding to add a profile? Here?
Oh, yeah, yep. There we go.
Yep.
Yeah, so they're wondering how you, oh, so it looks like there's some plus signs, but
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
wondering,
that's probably,
yeah.
yeah.
click
I
on
would
the plus
probably
sign.
use the plus sign, yeah, to add it. You also could do it through the, once you click on your profile and you get down into, over here, down into the sections, you can use the plus signs down here as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, super. Last quick thing, I know we're out of time, but this has been my bonus little session or quick part. If you're obviously looking at in terms of working for an employer, and I'm just gonna use my Salesforce as an example earlier, highly recommend doing that. Obviously clicking on jobs and begin kind of searching and kind of going through the process here, and you can kind of do some filtering in this section around different roles. And obviously you can also find kind of people that work at these companies, as well as think about kind of what they're thinking. So you can click on all jobs, and then you can get it here, which is where I'm talking about, and you can kind of do entry level, which is maybe related to what you do, and you can think and kind of see through kind of what the project. But spend a little time getting on the company's LinkedIn profile sites with regards to their jobs, because again, you can get into some analytics around roles that may be related to what you're thinking about. So thanks again, Tyler, for hosting today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everybody for attending. Some of your answers I answered in the Q&A specifically to you. So if we didn't go over them in the conversation that we had, take a look there. We will be posting this online, and I will send you all an alert when it's available so that you can reference back you know, to the entire video for your benefit. But that being said, make sure that you check out the Career Services Center. They're a great resource for you, especially during this time as you're looking for some career coaching or resume building workshops. All of that is available to you at the Career Services Center. And we have so many people who are willing and able and excited to help you, especially during this time. So with that being said, I hope you all enjoy your Friday. I hope that you, you know, are able to find some joy in having Monday off, and that's good news to you for those who may have forgotten. All right, well, thank you again, Chris.
Thanks again, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time with us this afternoon.
All righty.